Hi, and welcome back to Purple Collar Life. I'm Chad, and in today's video we're talking about firewood, something I learned long ago. Probably my dad showed me when I was just a young boy going camping. And this is a trick that helps make starting a fire much easier. I've done it probably ever since then, especially when camping, but also helps out for when you're starting a fire in the wood stove. So let's take a look at the wood stove, and then we'll talk about the trick that makes starting a fire and getting a fire going faster much easier. I'm here in the basement at our buck stove model 91. You can see there's not currently any flames inside. It's burnt down to just the coals. So this tip not only applies to starting a new fire, but also in a situation like this where you've got some coals and you want to rekindle that flame and get a fire going once again. So if I open the stove up here, you'll see that I do have some coals here at the bottom, not many though. And there is still a piece of wood here on the side that has some coals on it. But there's some coals back behind there that we can see. So how many of you, and go ahead and raise your hand here, the first time when you were a young child and you were asked to help build a fire, you knew that you had to crumple up paper, probably newspaper, so you did that on the bottom of the fire. You knew you had to use kindling, so you found something like this, a smaller piece of wood, much smaller than a regular burning piece of wood. You threw this on top of that paper, you lit it, and you were thinking that the kindling would take on, and then you'd throw on some firewood, but then you found that this big chunk of kindling did not take on. That was definitely me. I knew that you used different wood for kindling, but what I didn't realize was that you have to make this not only smaller, but it's got to have some edges. So one thing I learned early on was that fire kind of follows aerodynamics. So if you've got a round piece like this, it's harder for this to catch on fire than a piece like this that's got a split out of it, or a cut with the knot. Anything that has edges catches on fire better than something a little bit more aerodynamic with round sides like this. Now this is fine to throw in the fire once you've got good coals and a flame going. This will burn great. It actually does catch on a little bit slower though than something like this. So thinking about when you're starting a fire for the first time, this chunk of 2x6 is not going to light very easily. And if the goal is to make a fire in the most productive way possible, obviously you want to use a hatchet and make smaller pieces of your kindling wood. So I've done that here, and you can see we do have some smaller pieces. So you obviously can see there's a difference between this and these split pieces, but there's also a difference between these split pieces and these split pieces. You can see with these, I've created some additional edges. So what these little edges will do is allow the heat to catch these edge pieces on fire faster than the more aerodynamic rounded corners. So just a little trick I've learned that applies not only to kindling, but also to pieces of wood. And this trick helps out the most if you're trying to start a fire with wet wood or in a wet fireplace. I'm thinking of camping. So yeah, if you're starting a fire in the woods and this is your piece of kindling, it's going to take a lot more paper underneath this to get it going and keep it burning than if you go ahead and chop it up with a hatchet. But the trick is, if you want it to go even faster, and especially if it's a little bit wet or your paper's a little bit wet, make those little notches out of it, and that'll help it catch on faster. I'm going to show you a side-by-side in the wood stove, and then once we've got the coal base going good, I'll show you the difference between this piece of wood that was a full round that we split the side off of to give it some edges that catch on fire versus this round piece. And I guarantee you this piece with the edges catches on faster because the flames have that lip to catch on to, whereas this aerodynamic piece, the airflow and the flames just kind of go around that edge. It's harder for the flames to catch this wood on fire. Airflow is going to hit a flat edge, and that's where the fire can catch on. So anywhere you can split a piece of wood to have more edges, it'll catch on easier and faster than a straight round or a block of wood. Okay, so I've got some paper balled up here. You can see there are still coals in there. There's actually some flame going off to the side where we still had this piece of wood left. So we'll put these right here. We'll start with our square piece just to show how unsuccessful a big chunk of wood can start on fire. By the way, I still like regular matches. I keep some of these in the basement all the time. It's just my favorite way to start a fire. I know you can use an aim and flame clicker, but for me, I still just like the strike-on box matches. So hopefully you can see in there the paper is burning. The big chunk on the edges is starting to burn, but you can see we're not going to have enough paper to catch that on very well. It's starting to go because it is pine, and pine catches on pretty easily. But let's compare that to, we'll kick that off to the side. You can kind of see what caught on was the edge right underneath the paper. So that was 3 pieces of paper. We'll just throw in one more, but we're going to throw in our special notched out kindling wood and our chopped up kindling wood. You can see I've got the notches in there. So more edges, more flames, easier for that flame to catch on to the wood. So I pulled this big chunk over, but even now you can see in comparison how much better the smaller split pieces, especially these ones that had the notches in them, caught on almost instantly when the flames were hitting them, versus this one, you know, it's on fire, but it's not making a ton of fire, it's not making more heat. It would certainly be better if this were split in smaller pieces. So let's get this spread out a little bit. And now we're going to put 2 pieces of wood in. Try to get this even here. Okay, we're going to put this one with edges right here. And this round right here. And we'll see which one catches on fire faster. We need to close the door to get some draft going. I was getting some reflection because of the door being closed for the draft to go through. But here you can see I've reopened the door. Let's look at these pieces. This on the left is the round that had the split out of it. You can see how the edges have caught on fire. Whereas this round that's on the right, back the camera out a little bit, can see how the flames are just kind of going around it rather than catching it on fire. Because like I said, of the aerodynamics of the air going around that rounded surface. So I'm sure that in that time lapse you could see this piece just catches more and more on fire because of the edges. This rounded piece, still the flames are just kind of bending right around it. You can see the outside is starting to catch on fire on this round one. But without those sharp edges, it's just harder to catch that piece on fire. So yes, I started this fire in a buck stove, and some of you will say, well, the middle log caught on faster because of the airflow. I had the door open most of the time, at least during that entire time lapse, so that you could see it wasn't just the shotgun airflow coming in the center of the stove. It was actually air going in everywhere. It's just a matter of those sharper edges on the split piece of wood versus the rounder edges. So here's another round one. You know, this is fine to throw on a fire, but if you were trying to start a fire and you were using this, you'd want to do something, whether it's chip at it with a hatchet or split it and try to get it into a couple pieces so you have some edges for those flames to catch onto. You know, this is half of a round, so this side's going to be harder to catch on fire than this side where you've got the flames can kind of catch on those edges. And this is a quarter of a round. This is typically how you see wood split into either half a round or a quarter of a round, or 8 pieces, 6 pieces, and those edges certainly help catch things on fire a lot faster. So there you go, there's my tip. Probably most of you already knew that, but I wanted to make a video about it just in case. This is especially apparent, like I said, if you're outside camping, you're in the damp of the morning, you've had the dew overnight, you want to get that kindling to catch on faster, so you're not trying to burn as much crumpled up newspaper or whatever you have for fire starter. So the kindling being split and then notched out catches it on all the faster. The next size up after kindling, if you can get some sharp edges on that, that's going to catch on faster than rounds like this. So think about that the next time you're camping. Spend a little bit of extra time splitting that kindling, making some notches in it if it's damp, splitting any rounds you have so that you've got sharper edges for your fire to catch on. I was going to make the title of this video something like Firewood, an edgy topic, or Firewood, let's get edgy. I'm not exactly sure at this point what I'll call the video, but it's basically about the importance of having some edges when you're trying to start a fire so that the flames can catch onto those edges faster. Thanks for watching. If you yourself have known this trick for a long time, leave those comments down below. This is certainly someone who was just starting out, and I remember being a child when I was just starting out, starting fires at camp. I didn't always know that little trick. Like I said, I even would throw the whole blocks of kindling on, not knowing that splitting them up would make them catch on faster, hotter, and make the fire more productive. Thanks for watching. Leave those comments down below, and hopefully we'll see you again the next time. Let's take a look at how that round and the split round is burning now after a couple minutes. And if you're keeping track, this is still our first cord of firewood that I brought in at the start of this winter. The front row is now all gone, and the back row is getting shorter, especially over on this side. This is probably the original height all along, maybe one row higher, but probably right about here. So you can see I've taken some from here, I've taken quite a bit from here, and we used the entire front row. We haven't needed to burn the fire quite as hot, so that has helped. I did a video about how this firewood being split longer at 24 inches burns that much longer in the wood stove. I'll put a link to that video up above. Here's our update.